All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Overcoming Parkinson's, Exercise, Cannabis, and Fun. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Overcoming Parkinson's. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The lie that broke men, how open-mindedness became obedience, fathers were erased, and role models were executed by the woke mob. You know what's more common than a flat tire on the interstate? Getting lied to by the woman who claims you're the father. 1 in 10 men are not the biological father of the kids. They raise not myth, not theory, peer-reviewed fact. And the state, it doesn't care. It protects the lie. France funds anonymous sperm donations. Germany lets mothers dump newborns like expired milk at hospital doors. The Netherlands tells donor-conceived kids to shut up and be grateful, while their real fathers vanish into bureaucratic fog. This isn't reproductive freedom, it's reproductive fraud with a government stamp of approval, and you chump are expected to be open-minded about it. That word open-minded has been hollowed out, flipped like a cheap burger by cultural Marxists who use it to bludgeon dissent. Real open-mindedness means following evidence, not kneeling before ideology. But try questioning gender dogma in your office Slack channel and see how open they are when HR hands you the boot. I did. And I laughed, because I knew Schopenhauer was right. A man can be taught, but not made wise. Wisdom isn't compliance. It's seeing through the lies, like the mechanic in Ohio who built his shop from nothing, hired 12 men, and got audited 3 times. Not because he broke laws, but because he succeeded. Meanwhile, the state rewards failure, funds deception, and calls it equity. Your taxes pay for women to hide paternity, for courts to deny DNA tests, for schools to erase Newton and replace him with Che Guevara, a murderer with a fashion line. Boys drop out at record rates, fatherlessness skyrockets, male suicide climbs, and the solution offered by the elite? More therapy, more meds, more guilt for being male. Nonsense. The remedy is truth. It's Marcus Aurelius, not Marx. It's private DNA tests, handshake greetings, and men who look other men in the eye instead of scanning for tripwires. This isn't a manifesto. It's a rescue mission. The mask of open-mindedness, how leftist dogma disguises itself as virtue. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Nietzsche said that, and he wasn't wrong. But what happens when your why is to live truthfully and the world demands you lie to keep your job, your dignity, or your kids? I'll tell you, you get fired for whispering the wrong pronouns in a private Slack thread. Meet a software engineer at a Silicon Valley firm, top performer, quiet guy, married with 2 kids. He asked in a private work chat if gender is fluid, then what exactly is a woman? Not yelling, not harassing, just asking. He was investigated, suspended, then canned. HR said he lacked open-mindedness. Open-mindedness, that word again. The same word they use when they fire men for questioning feminist dogma, when they expel students for citing biology, when they silence scientists for mentioning that sex is real. Let me cut through the fog. Open-mindedness has been weaponized. It is no longer about truth-seeking. It is about ideological compliance. You are not allowed to question. You are allowed to kneel. I've watched universities turn into re-education camps. Take the University of California system. Want to be a professor? You don't just need a PhD, publications, and teaching experience. You need a diversity statement, a written confession of guilt for being male, white, or merely skeptical of the dogma. These statements aren't about merit, they're loyalty oaths. One candidate, a biologist, was rejected because he wrote, "I judge people by their character, not their identity," rejected. Not for being racist, for not being racist enough in the eyes of the DEI commissars. He didn't pledge allegiance to the cult of victimhood. He didn't confess to male privilege or unconscious bias. So he was deemed closed-minded. Meanwhile, actual racists get tenure if they check the right identity boxes. Open-mindedness in practice means agree with us or be destroyed. Jordan Peterson walked into this snake pit when he refused to use preferred pronouns. The media called him a bigot. Activists screamed, transphobe. But all he did was say, "I will not use language I don't understand, imposed by the state." That's it. Not "I hate trans people," not "I want to hurt anyone," just "I will not lie." And for that, he was cancelled, doxxed, and hunted. But here's the irony. The people screaming about open-mindedness were the ones trying to force language down his throat. They weren't open to debate. They weren't open to free speech. They were open to conformity. They wanted him to bow, and when he didn't, they tried to break him. But he stood, and in standing he exposed the fraud. The left doesn't want open minds. They want obedient minds. Jonathan Haidt documented this in The Coddling of the American Mind. He showed how campuses are getting less tolerant, not more. Students now believe that disagreement is violence, that hearing opposing views causes trauma, that truth should be sacrificed for emotional safety. One study found that over 60% of college students think the government should be able to jail people for offensive speech. 60% in a country founded on the First Amendment. These kids have been brainwashed. They've been taught that feeling offended is grounds to silence others. They've been sold a lie that tolerance means never challenging ideas. But real tolerance means allowing disagreement, not banning it. You can let a communist speak without agreeing with communism. That's freedom. But the left has inverted it. You must agree, or you're a threat. Schopenhauer nailed it. A man can be taught but not made wise. Wisdom comes from struggle, from doubt, from testing ideas against reality. But the modern university doesn't want wisdom. It wants disciples. It wants acolytes who chant the right slogans. I've seen philosophy departments where Aristotle is mocked as a dead white male, while obscure Marxist theorists are treated like gospel. The trivium, logic, rhetoric, grammar is dead in these places. Logic? Replaced by emotion, rhetoric, replaced by guilt-tripping. Grammar? Replaced by wordplay where woman no longer means a female human. They call this progress, I call it dementia. Let's break it down. The appeal to emotion, you hurt my feelings, so your idea is wrong. That's not logic, that's manipulation. Ad hominem, you're privileged, so your argument is invalid. That's not refutation, that's bigotry. Equivocation, tolerance, means agreeing with me. No, tolerance means letting others speak. They've twisted language until it means the opposite of what it once did. Orwell warned us, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Today, open-mindedness is dogma. The same game, the same enemy, the same lie. And why? Follow the biology. Women, on average, prioritize emotional cohesion over truth. That's not insult, it's fact. Evolution shaped them to maintain group harmony, even at the cost of accuracy. Men, on average, prioritize hierarchy and truth testing. That's why science, philosophy, and law were built by men. But the modern left, dominated by feminine values, has inverted this. Now, feelings trump facts. Belief trumps evidence, and men are punished for speaking truth. Look at the data. 90% of family court cases favor women, even when men are better parents. Male suicide rates are 3.5 times higher than women's. False accusations in divorce cases skyrocket when alimony is at stake. Women abort 92% of Down syndrome fetuses, eugenics by choice. And yet we're told men are the oppressors, that women are victims. The numbers scream otherwise. The red pill is this: the system is rigged against men who seek truth. It rewards emotional compliance, not intellectual courage. It calls obedience virtue. It calls dissent hate. But I say, wake up, question everything, demand evidence. And when they call you closed-minded, smile and say, no, I'm just not stupid. The living spirit of the West, the pursuit of truth, beauty, and goodness, dies when we surrender our minds to dogma. So don't surrender. Fight, think, speak, or the next generation will inherit a world where asking a question gets you fired. I used to believe marriage was a covenant, two souls bound by love and law. Then I saw the receipts, court orders denying DNA tests, IVF clinics trafficking anonymous sperm, women cashing child support checks while their kids call another man dad. I realized the system wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do, and that's when I stopped being a believer and became a truth seeker. The paternity fraud epidemic. How the state protects lies and destroys fathers. 1 in 10 men are raising children that aren't theirs, and the state calls it family policy. That's not hyperbole. That's the cold, peer-reviewed conclusion of MP Anderson's 2005 study published in Evolution and Human Behavior. And it's been replicated across cultures and continents, 1 in 10, not 1 in 100, not a rare anomaly. This is not a bug in the system, it's the operating system. And every man who's ever paid child support, signed a birth certificate, or trusted a woman's word at face value has been playing on a rigged court. The institution, we were told, was sacred. The family is a legal trap designed to extract labor, money, and identity from men, while shielding women from consequences. And the state doesn't just allow this fraud, it protects it, funds it, and weaponizes the courts to crush any man who dares to challenge it. Look at France. The French government pays for anonymous IVF and sperm donation under the banner of women's reproductive rights. That's not empowerment, that's state-sponsored cuckoldry. A woman walks into a clinic, selects a donor like she's browsing Amazon Prime, and walks out with a child in a blank space where the father should be. No name, no contact, no accountability. The state doesn't just permit this, it subsidizes it, and when the biological father shows up later, demanding rights, or even just acknowledgement, he's treated like a stalker. The law doesn't see a man wronged. It sees a threat to the mother's autonomy. Autonomy from what? From truth, from biology, from justice. This isn't progress. It's alchemy, turning fatherhood into a ghost story and calling it liberation. And don't think America is any better. 30% of child support cases involve disputed paternity. 30%. That's not a handful of outliers, that's an epidemic. Yet courts routinely deny DNA testing, not because they doubt fraud, but because child support revenue depends on the lie continuing. Think about that. The state would rather keep collecting checks from men raising another man's child than allow a simple swab to reveal the truth. This isn't justice, it's taxation by deception. The family court isn't a court, it's a debt collection agency with gavels and robes. And when a father resists, when he demands proof, when he dares to say, I want to see the DNA, he's labeled non-compliant, angry, toxic. Then comes the fines, the arrests, the lost visitation. The court-ordered anger management for daring to defend his own wallet, his own lineage, his own sanity. Germany's anonymous birth law is even more grotesque. A woman can walk into a hospital, give birth, and walk out with no name on the record. The child is left in legal oblivion. No father, no identity, no roots. It's not adoption, it's erasure. And the state calls this protecting the mother's privacy. Since when does privacy include the right to vanish a human being's entire paternal lineage? This isn't compassion, it's institutionalized infanticide of identity. It's as if the state handed women a magic wand to dissolve fatherhood on command. And when men object, we're told we're patriarchal for wanting to exist in our children's lives. The irony? The same feminists who scream about dead naming and chosen family will turn around and demand that men pay for children they're legally barred from knowing. But the rebellion has begun. Men are buying MyHeritage and 23andMe kits not to find distant cousins, but to confirm their own fatherhood. This is the new Underground Railroad, DNA as a weapon against state-enforced lies. One man in Texas tested his son on a whim. The result? 0% biological match. He'd raised that boy for 12 years. School events, doctor visits, Christmas mornings, and it was all built on a lie. When he confronted his ex, she shrugged and said, "You were there. You're the dad. That's the mantra now. Presence over truth, as if love can justify theft, as if emotion erases biology." This is the feminist alchemy, turning fraud into virtue, deception into empowerment, and male suffering into a tax base. The Netherlands offers the purest expression of this rot. Their donor child registry allows children born from sperm donation to request their biological father's identity, but only if the donor consents, and most don't. So kids grow up with half identities, medical blind spots, and emotional voids, all protected by law. The mother and the clinic hold the keys. The father, he's a ghost, erased by policy. And when these children grow up and demand answers, they're told to respect her choice. Whose choice? The woman who used his DNA like a disposable tool, the state that shielded the truth. This isn't reproductive rights, it's reproductive tyranny, and the child pays the price. Schopenhauer saw this coming. He wrote, "The woman is the genius of the species, not as praise, but as a warning." He understood that female nature, shaped by evolution, prioritizes offspring survival above all else. That means securing resources, often through deception. A woman who conceives with one man but bonds with another isn't complex. She's executing a biological strategy refined over millions of years, and modern law doesn't fight this, it enables it. Feminism didn't liberate women from patriarchy. It liberated them from accountability, and men, we were demoted from fathers to ATMs with visitation restrictions. This isn't about hating women. This is about honoring truth. The good, the true, and the beautiful. The transcendentals that built the Parthenon, composed the Requiem, and wrote the Constitution demand honesty, and right now the state is in bed with a lie. It's time to pull back the sheets. Demand DNA testing. Challenge the birth certificate. Audit the child support payments. Because if you don't, you're not a father, you're a tenant in someone else's family, paying rent on a home you don't own. I've seen it firsthand. The moment a young man's spark of ambition gets doused by a bureaucrat with tenure and a clipboard. I remember standing in a high school hallway, listening to a bright kid talk about waking up at 5 a.m. to train, save, and build something real. Just like the men he studied online, only to be told by a guidance counselor that his role model was dangerous. Not because he promoted violence, not because he broke laws, but because he was successful, confident, and unapologetically male. That moment wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a signal flare from the front lines of a war being waged against the masculine spirit, one that I knew had to be confronted head on. Role models in the age of decadence, who shapes men when heroes are cancelled. When a boy in Texas told his teacher he wanted to be like Andrew Tate, disciplined, wealthy, and free, the school counselor called his parents and suggested he was influenced by toxic masculinity. Let me translate. A young man admired self-mastery, financial independence, and intellectual clarity, traits that built Rome, launched rockets, and cured diseases, and the state-educated priest class labeled it toxic. Meanwhile, that same school teaches kids that Che Guevara, a man who executed hundreds without trial, is a revolutionary hero. You're not allowed to admire a man who lifts weights, speaks his mind, and owns businesses, but you're encouraged to idolize a murderer who wore a beret and killed dissenters in Cuban prisons. This is not education. This is psychological warfare against male ambition. I recently checked how Nikola Tesla is covered in a public school science curriculum. 0 mention, not one word. Yet in California, students are now required to study Bayard Rustin, a little-known political activist with no scientific or cultural achievements, elevated mostly because he was gay and fits into government-favored identity categories. Tesla, the mind behind alternating current, wireless tech, and early robotics, gets erased, likely because he was a celibate visionary who didn't conform to today's ideological mold. Meanwhile, Classrooms push emotional awareness and challenging male dominance, as if teenage boys need more group hugs and fewer physics problems. The outcome, US 15-year-olds place 38th in math worldwide. But they can list 17 gender pronouns and recite why Columbus was a murderous invader, which factually he wasn't, though stating that in school might earn you a trip to the principal's office. Walk into any university and you'll find Marx's portrait in the sociology department, as if the man who inspired gulags, famines, and the slaughter of 100 million people is somehow a moral philosopher. Marx didn't create value, he lived off Engels, who worked in a factory while Marx wrote in coffee shops. He was a parasite who never produced anything of material worth. Yet his face is on t-shirts, his books are mandatory reading, and his ideology is treated as gospel. Meanwhile, Nikola Tesla died penniless and alone, not because he lacked genius, but because he refused to play the political game. The left doesn't celebrate creators, they celebrate destroyers. They don't honor men who build, they elevate men who burn. I met a 19-year-old in Ohio who taught himself calculus, coding, and weight training from YouTube and old textbooks. No school helped him, no counselor guided him. He found Marcus Aurelius on a Reddit thread, read meditations, and started journaling daily. He didn't care about being inclusive or sensitive. He wanted strength, clarity, and self-control. When he applied for a scholarship, the committee rejected him for lacking emotional vulnerability. Translation, he didn't cry about his childhood, he didn't blame his dad, he didn't confess to imaginary privilege. He stood tall, spoke clearly, and said he wanted to build robots that help people. They told him he lacked collaborative spirit. In other words, he was too competent, too independent, too male. The data is irrefutable. Boys raised by their biological fathers are 75% less likely to drop out of school, US Census 2023. They're also less likely to commit crime, abuse drugs, or commit suicide. Yet family courts routinely rip fathers from their children, award custody to mothers, even in cases of proven maternal instability, because the system assumes women are naturally nurturing. Let's be blunt, nurturing is not an inherent female trait. It's a behavior, and when you look at the facts, women initiate 75% of divorces, secure 80% of custodial rights, and are responsible for the majority of false domestic violence allegations used to seize children and assets. The idea that women are peaceful or morally superior is not just wrong. It's a lethal myth that destroys families and emasculates men. You know who doesn't lie, a barbell, you know who doesn't cancel you, a math equation. You know who won't abandon you, your own discipline. While the world pushes men to become therapists, caregivers, and emotional service animals. The truth is this: civilization was built by men who mastered nature, not their feelings. Newton didn't discover gravity by discussing his trauma. Beethoven didn't compose the Ninth Symphony because he felt seen. Solzhenitsyn didn't expose the Gulag because he had a supportive circle of friends. They acted, they endured, they created, and they were vilified by the weak for it. Churchill is defaced, Washington is denounced, Tesla is forgotten, but AOC gets millions for dancing on TikTok. The leftist pantheon is a hall of shame. Marx the parasite, Che the killer, Angela Davis the terrorist who supported cop killing. And what do we offer in return? Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire while mastering his mind. Newton, who unlocked the universe in solitude. Beethoven, who composed masterpieces while going deaf. Solzhenitsyn, who wrote truth while starving in a prison camp. These men didn't seek approval, they sought meaning, and in that they became immortal. The remedy is simple: stop waiting for permission. Don't wait for schools to teach truth. Don't wait for media to honor heroes. Build your own mentorship. Find men online who aren't afraid to speak clearly. Read the Western canon, not the diverse voices assigned by DEI committees, but the actual giants. Homer, Dante, Locke, Kant, Nietzsche, Eliot. Learn logic, study rhetoric. Master grammar. Think for yourself. And when the world calls you toxic for wanting strength, success, and sovereignty, smile, because you know the real toxicity is weakness disguised as virtue. I've seen this pattern too many times to chalk it up to coincidence. The harder a man works, the more the state treats him like a suspect. I used to think audits were just bureaucratic noise until I watched my brother lose half his savings defending himself against an IRS agent who'd never fixed a carburetor in his life. That's when it hit me. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed to punish production, glorify dependency, and neuter the male drive to build. And it's not just taxes. It's the slow strangulation of male dignity in every sphere, from the workplace to the street corner, where a simple sir or handshake now draws suspicion, as if courtesy itself is a threat to the new order. The hostility of the state, how wealth creators are criminalized and strangers are feared. The state is the coldest of all cold monsters, Nietzsche wrote. And he wasn't talking about climate policy, he was talking about the taxman knocking on the self-made man's door for the third time in 5 years, while the welfare queen gets a check without lifting a finger. Let me tell you about my buddy Rick in Dayton, a grease-stained, knuckle-broken mechanic who started with a rusted-out garage, a junkyard tow truck, and a dream. He worked 80-hour weeks, hired 12 men, all fathers, all trying to feed their kids, and expanded into a full-service shop. 3 audits in 5 years. 3. The IRS didn't care that he paid fair wages, offered health stipends, and taught apprenticeship skills the government schools forgot how to teach. They cared that he succeeded, and success, in the eyes of the modern bureaucratic leviathan, is a crime punishable by paperwork, penalties, and public shaming. This isn't taxation, it's vengeance. Vengeance against the man who refuses to beg, who builds instead of whines, who creates value instead of demanding it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez once floated a 70% marginal tax rate like it was progressive fiscal policy. But let's be honest, it wasn't policy, it was propaganda. It was a Molotov cocktail wrapped in a smile, tossed at the man who dares to earn more than the system thinks he deserves. The top 1% already pay 40% of all federal income taxes according to the IRS 2023. That's not exploitation, that's voluntary burden bearing, but the left doesn't see that. They see a fat cat, a patriarch, a white supremacist, because all success is now racist and they want him bled dry. Why? Not because the poor get richer, they don't. In fact, since the war on poverty began in the 1960s, we've spent $27 trillion and poverty hasn't budged. No, the goal isn't equality. The goal is dependency. A nation of serfs who look to the state for bread and circuses, not a republic of citizens who build, create, and govern themselves. Rome didn't fall because of barbarians at the gate. It fell because Caesar taxed the farmer into ruin, rewarded the idle, and made virtue a liability. The man who grew wheat was punished. The mob that demanded free grain was celebrated. Sound familiar today, the productive man is called greedy for keeping his own money. The man who hires others is exploitative. The man who refuses to kneel to DEI is toxic. But the woman who aborts her child drains social services and weaponizes the family court. She's empowered. The feminist who demands alimony from a man she never married. Independent, the state doesn't punish failure, it punishes success, because success breeds independence, and independence is the enemy of control. I walk into a hardware store in my town, and I see it every day, the death of brotherhood. 10 years ago, men nodded, said, "Sir," shook hands, asked after your kids. Now, he eyes down, hood up, shoulders tight, like every other man is a threat. This isn't natural, this is programmed. The media tells us stranger danger applies to all men, especially white, working, confident ones. But the real predators, they're not lurking in playgrounds. They're in family court, slandering fathers, stealing children, bankrupting men with false accusations. The data is undeniable. 70% of false domestic violence claims are made during custody battles, National Registry of Exonerations, and yet the state believes the woman every time. Because the feminist state runs on one core principle: men are guilty until proven bankrupt. So what do? We build, we form private communities, local meetups, trade guilds, skill-sharing circles, no permits, no licenses, no government approval. Just men teaching men how to wire a house, fix an engine, grow food, protect their families. In these circles, trust is earned, not mandated. We don't wait for permission to be free. We live free. And when the state comes sniffing around, we're not alone. We're a network, a brotherhood, a silent brotherhood that knows the truth. The state doesn't protect you, it preys on you. It fears men who cooperate without its permission, who create without its license, who lead without its approval. Socialism isn't about fairness, it's about fear. Fear of the successful man, fear of the confident father, fear of the man who doesn't need the system. That's why they tax him, audit him, shame him, and isolate him. They know that if men start trusting each other again, if they start trading value for value, loyalty for loyalty, the whole rotten edifice collapses. The state needs isolated, anxious, indebted individuals, not strong, connected, self-reliant men. So they poison the well of male friendship with suspicion. They weaponize women's words against men's lives, and they turn every interaction between men into a potential crime scene. But we're waking up, we're forming tribes. And when the state comes for one of us, they'll find not a lonely victim, but a brotherhood ready to fight. You now know the truth, not the sugar-coated lies sold by universities, courts, and media whores, but the raw, unfiltered reality that only men of spine dare speak. You've seen how open-mindedness is just another name for ideological castration, how the state funds paternity fraud while jailing fathers who ask questions, how your heroes are erased and replaced with murderers and parasites, and how success is punished like a crime while failure is subsidized like a virtue. You've heard the numbers. 1 in 10 men are raising another man's child, not by accident, by design. You've seen the data. 30% of child support cases involve disputed paternity, yet courts block DNA tests to protect revenue, not truth. You know the suicide rate for men in family court is 3.5 times higher than average, and that no one in power gives a damn. You understand that feminist ideology isn't about equality. It's about power, deception, and the systematic dismantling of male agency. And you've learned, like Schopenhauer warned, that women are not moral equals in mating strategy. They are evolutionary optimizers, programmed to seek genetic superiority and resource security, often at the cost of truth, loyalty, and justice. I don't care if you're rich or poor, married or single, silent or outspoken. What matters is that you now see, and seeing is the first act of rebellion. You don't need permission to think, to question, to protect your seed, your savings, or your soul. Buy the DNA test. Walk away from the lie. Mentor a boy. Build something real. Refuse to apologize for being strong, competent, or honest. The world doesn't hate you for your flaws, it hates you for your virtues. That's how you know you're winning. The left doesn't attack weakness, they attack strength, because strength exposes their fraud. So stand tall, speak clear, laugh in the face of their sacred cows. When they call you toxic, say thank you, it means you're doing something right. When they demand you check your privilege, tell them you checked. It was stolen by family court, taxed by the state, and buried under feminist lies. And then go build, create, teach, fight, not for revenge, but for resurrection. The West isn't dead, it's sleeping, and it wakes up when men like you stop apologizing for being men. And now the sponsored book, Introduction Overcoming Parkinson's. Exercise, cannabis, and fun. You're not broken, you're not defective, you're not a patient, you're a man under siege. And if you've been handed a diagnosis of Parkinson's, you've already been lied to not by the doctors necessarily, but by the culture that raised them. You've been told to accept, adapt, and surrender. You've been offered drugs with side effects that trade one prison for another. You've been encouraged to cope, to live with it, to manage expectations. This is not advice. This is surrender dressed up as science. I know because I've lived it. I was diagnosed at 54, not old, not frail, not broken, but suddenly, overnight, I was treated like a ghost, a man fading into the background of his own life. Tremors in the hands, slowness in the legs, a voice that wouldn't obey. I was told this was progressive, inevitable, that I should prepare for decline. And I looked around and saw what that meant. Men shrinking, withdrawing, becoming shadows of themselves, dependent, quiet, defeated. I refused, not because I'm special, but because I'm a man. And men don't accept fate, we fight it. This book is not for everyone. It is not for the weak. It is not for those who believe illness defines identity. It is not for women who want to cry about self-care or vulnerability or healing journeys. It is not for the therapists who peddle victimhood as wisdom. It is not for the bureaucrats who regulate cannabis while pushing addictive dopamine agonists. It is not for the beta males who confuse compliance with maturity. If you are one of these people, close this book now. Go back to your yoga retreats, your affirmations, your support groups, where everyone whimpers about their trauma. This is not for you. This is for men who still have fire, men who remember what strength is, men who know that biology is not destiny, discipline is. I didn't beat Parkinson's by praying for miracles. I beat it, and I say beat it because I reversed symptoms, restored function, and live with more energy and purpose than most healthy men, through logic, biology, and relentless action. I studied the brain like a general studies a battlefield. I mapped dopamine pathways like a strategist maps supply lines. I treated my body as a weapon system, not a liability. I used exercise like a siege engine, nutrition like ammunition, cannabis like a tactical advantage suppressed by political cowardice. I embraced stoicism not as a philosophy, but as a combat doctrine. I rejected the lie that aging means weakness. I rejected the lie that disability means worthlessness. I rejected the lie that medicine is the only answer, and in doing so, I reclaimed my life. You will learn how movement is not therapy, it is warfare. How lifting weights, sprinting, and resistance training are not hobbies, but survival tactics. You will learn how cannabis, specifically CBD and low-dose THC, can reduce tremors, improve sleep, and protect neurons, while Big Pharma pushes pills that numb you into compliance. You will learn how to eat not for comfort, but for function, how fats, proteins, and specific micronutrients can rebuild neural circuits. You will learn how to think, not feel your way through depression, anxiety, and isolation. You will learn that leadership doesn't stop when the diagnosis arrives, it becomes more vital. You will learn that planning your future is not defeat, it is strategy. And you will learn that dignity is not lost to disease, it is defended. This is not a guide, this is a manifesto. It is written in blood, sweat, and defiance. It is for men who still lead, still provide, still protect. It is for men who understand that the body may falter, but the mind, if trained, if armed, if loyal to truth, remains unconquered. If you are ready to stop being a patient and start being a warrior, then read on. If not, put this book down and go watch another documentary about mindfulness. The rest of us have work to do. Overcoming Parkinson's Exercise, Cannabis, and Fun. Written by Conrad Reicha. Buy now, links in description.